This video is going to be about Trump's budget. The final budget, of course, is still being debated. At the moment of recording this video, Trump's budget has failed to gain the votes to pass the House, as conservatives demand immediate cuts to Medicaid and to the incentives for green projects in the Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. So this video will deal with Trump's proposal, regardless of the bill that is finally approved by both chambers, which we will tackle in another video in due time. Thus, in this video, we are going to address the short-term and long-term consequences of Trump's budget as it was sent to the House of Representatives. A. In the short term, number one, the budget reflects mostly MAGA's priorities. As brutal as this budget is with the poor and the environment, it doesn't fully reflect the priorities of fiscal conservatives. And the opposition it has encountered in the House of Representatives from fiscal hawks. So, for instance, the ICE budget has received a significant increment since it is MAGA's top priority. Number two, the Yale Budget Lab has estimated that the planned reduction in the IRS budget could lose almost $160 billion in net revenue from reduced collections from audited taxpayers. This means a larger deficit, and because of the insufficient amounts of cuts, which are 163 billion, it will imply a larger debt, precisely as the Fed is reluctant to cut interest rates due to the uncertainty associated with Trump's tariffs and Moody's cuts to our credit rating. Let me remind you here a study made some time ago by the Peterson Foundation, where it showed that the main driver of the deficit was medical costs and derivatively the interest paid on the debt, and that the revenue had been lagging spending significantly. So, do you ask me? We need to redefine government to make it more effective. Well, yes, I proposed an upgrade and waste commission long ago, which would go in those lines, but we also need revenue. And we need to rein in medical costs. And don't come to me again with this fairy tale that these poor corporations are going to languish and will be unable to provide us sound research if we don't let them have three-digit profit margins on the drugs they sell or on the service they provide in hospitals, and see if the healthcare system was a living portrait of the model of perfect competition. But let's come back to our subject. Consider that the president's skinny budget is pretty much leaving discretionary spending intact, and instead of cutting is reallocating funds according to MAGA priorities. For instance, while leaving Medicaid pretty much at the same amount, it produces a number of conditions that will, according to the Milken Institute, leave 4.6 to 5.2 million without coverage. But new bureaucracy will have to be hired to supervise the job requirements introduced by the House bill. So we are not talking, as in the case of Dodge, we are not talking here about cutting waste. We are talking here about redefining the role of government with a tax cut, a 5 trillion tax cut on top, of course. Number three, up to this point, the losses consumers will suffer due to laxer supervision after the deep cuts to, for instance, the CFPB. As an example, consider that banks are keeping credit card rates high even after the CFPB rule they blame for high APRs was killed. So you see, they complained about a rule issued by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Once they get it killed under the Trump administration, they keep the interest rates high anyway. Take that model of perfect competition. Add this to the more precarious, add this, all this to the more precarious service, the Social Security Administration, just to give you another example, will provide due to cuts imposed by Dodge in terms of accessibility, number of locations, staff, and so on. Four, as noted by Axios, President Trump's first federal budget proposal follows through on his campaign promise to slash large chunks of federal spending while boosting security, which could have ramifications for Americans' healthcare, education, and housing. End quote. If you consider pharaonic projects like the F-47 and Golden Dome, while the Russians still have an edge on electronic war, the term boosting security is, to say the least, debatable. And while other sources of waste like Medicare Advantage are left untouched, the cuts will be centered on healthcare, education, and clean energy programs. This while the tax cuts represent a massive redistribution from the poor to the wealthy. More than two-thirds of the plan's tax cuts will go or would go to those making about $217,000 or more, the highest income 20% of households. The top 1%, those making more than $1.1 million, would get nearly one quarter of the tax cuts, with 68% going to the top quintile. The top quintile would be the top 20% in terms of income. Number five, the three areas where Trump's spending cuts will affect the less affluent the most will be A. Education, where it is worth mentioning the cuts to Head Start and the 4.5 billion used is going to affect K-12 and from K-12 to Title I programs, which help low achieving students, especially in high poverty schools, the most. Title I programs are designed to help schools with high percentage of low income students ensure all students meet academic standards. B. Healthcare, where it is worth mentioning that on top, of course, of the new rules for Medicaid, the $674 million in cuts to Medicare and Medicaid program management, which will definitely affect the service. And even when Trump's plan proposes outsourcing the service to veterans outside Veterans Affairs, the push of the federal workforce he has championed could jeopardize VA research into suicide prevention, opioid addiction, prosthetics, and cancer. C. Housing, where it is worth mentioning cuts affecting renters, homeowners, and affordable housing, and include 26 billion in tenant-based rental assistance, public housing, and housing for the elderly and the disabled, 4 billion from the low-income home energy assistance program. So he's passing these programs to state and local authorities. That way, it will be them, not Trump, who will end up dropping all down south in these programs. And he's also ending the community development block grant, 3.3 billion cut, on top of all we have mentioned before. Then B in the law, and this may be even more concerning. It's the effects in the long term. Trump's budget has proposed drastic cuts for scientific research. Among them, we have 3.5 billion in cuts to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, about a third less than in 20 a third less than in 2025, 17 billion in cuts to the National Institute of Health, nearly 25 reduction from past years, 1 billion in cuts to the substance abuse and mental health services, and this with not to mention cuts to the National Academy of Science. Together with his hostile attitude towards international students and research projects in cooperation with other countries, the most likely outcome will be a fall in our future productivity, which is the core of our advantage over other countries. This while China is going in exactly the opposite direction. Finally, the question worth asking is, what is the position of Democrats on this budget? True, they are out of power, and until the 2026 midterms, the only power they have is the Senate filibuster, to which Schumer renounced at least in the latest continuing resolution vote that has made him famous. But they can still open their mouths, can they? How are voters going to trust them in 2028 if they can't make a serious assessment of the Biden administration that provides an answer to the dissatisfaction shown by the working class in Harris's defeat? How are voters going to know that they are not going to come with another Biden in 2028 when Harris, who endorsed Biden's policies, lost to Trump by about 3 million votes? The only other time in the 21st century that Democrats has lost the popular vote was in 2004, and that was by 500,000 votes. A budget reflects a definition of government. and Democrats, despite having rich legacies in Bill Clinton and Roosevelt, has not even been able to oppose Trump's and Dodge narratives with a government narrative of their own, not even because trust in government is at historic lows since the Obama administration. Finally, when Orbán won in Hungary in 2010, he did it with a two-thirds majority, and yet that supermajority is not the main cause of the way he has clung to power since then. The top cause is the mediocrity of Hungarian socialists and liberals who have not been able to break the apathy of the Hungarian people and present them with a credible alternative. And if we don't want America to go the way of Hungary, the civil society should better start shaking the Democratic Party before we wake up to a bitter new normal. And having said that, let me leave you with our newscast.
Good evening. This is Brian Thomas Simons, and these are the main headlines of this hour. Among other news,
New 266 executive decisions were released in the Oval Office during the weekend. Among them, 1. Gifts given to President Trump, and only to President Trump, by foreign governments or agents or campaign contributors out of the kindness of their hearts won't be considered in violation of the Emoluments Clause. 2. From now on, Eric Trump's last name will be changed to Jones, and his admission to the White House will be denied. The purpose of this executive decision will be to prevent President Trump from embarrassing himself every time he has to introduce him as his son to visitors. 3. In 2029, the Donald J. Trump Presidential Library will regift President Trump the $400 million plane he was recently gifted by the government of Qatar as a reward for being the best president ever. Asked about the executive order, Senator Schumer said that he would propose a note of gratitude to the Qatari government once he got back to the Senate floor. 4. May 12th will be remembered as Winners' Day and will have its own federal holiday to commemorate the day China reduced tariffs to the United States. Any mention of the USA government caving first to the firm posture of the Chinese government will be prosecuted under the Enemy Aliens Act. 5. Secretary Lil Marco will be awarded 3 more medals, which will be shipped to him to the Maldives via UPS. B. After the appointment of Fox News host Jeanine Pirro as Washington, D.C. U.S. Attorney raised complaints about her lack of qualifications, President Trump responded by appointing January 6 rioters for other federal positions to misdirect the public's attention. 1. Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. It issues general-purpose guidelines that direct how various federal regulatory agencies draft, issue, and enforce regulations. It will be led by Jacob Chansley, also known as the QAnon Shaman. Qualifications: leadership, proactiveness, emotional intelligence, and goal-driven. 2. Government Services Administration. It oversees how the government buys goods and services. It will be led by Howard Burton Adams, known as Panda Bear, Missing Pills, or Bad Santa. Qualifications: leadership, proactiveness, emotional intelligence, and goal-driven. 3. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It provides a general framework for states to craft their own regulations around autonomous vehicles, from licensing drivers to drafting new traffic laws. It will be led by Russell Dean Alford, also known as MAGA Duck Dynasty or Missing Rent. Qualifications: leadership, proactiveness, emotional intelligence, and goal-driven. 4. White House Office of American Innovation. It makes recommendations to the President on policies and plans that improve government operations and services, improve the quality of life for Americans now and in the future, and spur job creation. It will be led by Terry L. Allen, also known as Liberty Tax Service or Depressive Uncle Sam. Qualifications: leadership, proactiveness, emotional intelligence, and goal-driven. 5. Office of the Controller of the Currency. It regulates specific aspects of the American banking system, such as bank liquidity, money laundering, and terrorism finance. It will be led by Paul Hodgkins, also known as Jesus MAGA, MAGA Jesus, Dropout Jesus, or Trailer House Jesus. Qualifications: leadership, proactiveness, emotional intelligence, and goal-driven. 6. National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's responsible for setting measurement standards for American industry, everything from the standard reference data in research to the metrics used for weight and physical distance. It will be led by Jordan Mink, also known as Fentanyl, Pink Slip, or Rent Behind. Qualifications: leadership, proactiveness, emotional intelligence, and goal-driven. Also good with tools. 7. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It controls the highly coveted reimbursement process for Medicare expenses. It will be led by Connie Meggs, also known as Trailer Woman, Homeschooling, Halloween, and Lost Cause. Qualifications: why not? C. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Responding to malicious comparisons with the occasions in which President Biden didn't recognize what should have been familiar faces, like the time he couldn't recognize his fundraiser George Clooney, invited the reporters to read the executive decision changing Eric's last name to Jones and declared that President Trump not recognizing Eric implied 1. An act to protect his self-esteem. What else could you do if you had to face the fact that you have had a son like Eric? Asked Leavitt rhetorically. 2. A decision made on national security grounds. Having to admit that you have a son like Eric could be used to blackmail the president, clarified Leavitt. 3. A humanitarian act. He could have sent him alone to hunt lions in Africa in the hopes of the lions having the upper hand, but Don Jr. always had to be in the way. So the president preferred to ban Eric and change his last name, explained the press secretary. Asked by reporters whether it wouldn't have been more humane selling him to the gypsies, Secretary Leavitt admitted that they tried that option, but Eric was returned by the gypsies. 4. That locking Eric in a dungeon far away from the United States was a more expensive option and was disadvised by Doge, Leavitt mentioned, quoting Elon Musk. 5. That deleting Eric, as he did with Tiffany, was not an option, as Eric was not intelligent enough and always insisted on coming back to the spotlight, concluded the press secretary. DNC Vice Chair David Hogg rebuffs Representative Clyburn's reluctance to give up his seat. After learning of DNC Vice Chair Hogg's declarations criticizing Representative Jim Clyburn for clinging to his seat, Clyburn, visibly emotional, told reporters last week that giving up his House seat would mean giving up his life. DNC Vice Chair Hogg was adamant, though, arguing that seats in Congress don't belong to representatives, but to the young. There are so many kids who are cool, and yet can't get seats in Congress because old caciques put their own vanity before the vanity of young kids who are indeed cool, responded David Hogg to Clyburn's declarations. Voters rejected them because they are old and because they are not cool, so here, in Leaders We Deserve, we are committed to replacing the old guard with cool kids. Cool kids who will go to Congress to express themselves and show everybody that they really are cool. That's why, using 2 basic litmus tests, we have been able to select candidates for the upcoming midterms. In this endeavor, we have decided to listen to the people, and that's why we have scouted our candidates in Starbucks nationwide. So, those litmus tests, the basic qualifications every candidate must meet, are that the candidate must be young and that he, she, it, them, must also be cool. In short, candidates who will be able to captivate the working class. That's how we have been able to recruit amazing candidates. Among them, 1. Christian Carranza, Texas House of Representatives. She, her. Christian is a dreamer and a visionary who always knows what's in style. Her preferred Starbucks latte is cinnamon dolce latte, and she is specializing in gender studies at Rockville University. Her preferred hobby is listening to Taylor Swift songs. Her favorite show is Stranger Things. Favorite video game, Concord 2. Luis Mata, Tennessee House of Representatives. He, her, whatever. Luis is a sensitive and artistic young non-binary person whose life was deeply marked by the character played by Mateo, the character played by actor Nico Santos in the several TV series Superstore. As proof of his commitment, he, her, whatever shows the 10 stitches he, her, whatever got after demanding from fellow Hispanics the use of the term Latinx. Favorite singer, Lady Gaga. Favorite show, Stranger Things. Favorite video game, Dustborn. Favorite Starbucks drink, Cafe Latte. Favorite video game, Spider-Man 2. 3. Dante Pittman, North Carolina House of Representatives. He, him. Dante is the youngest candidate recruited so far by Leaders We Deserve, and his attitude always brings visibility to the issues he champions, among them. Another season for Stranger Things, tougher characters in Marvel movies, and lower prices at Starbucks. Favorite show, Stranger Things. Favorite video game, Portal Knights. Favorite Starbucks drink, Mocha Frappuccino. 4. Nate Douglas, Florida House of Representatives. They, them. Nate are two siblings who share the same name. Their passion is education and the criminal justice system, as both are dropouts who have first-hand knowledge of the inequities of Florida's penal system. They also believe that reparations and looting are civil rights protected by the Constitution. Favorite video game, Grand Theft Auto, and all its sequels. Favorite Starbucks drink, Lavender Oat Milk Latte. 5. Oscar de los Santos, Arizona House of Representatives. She, them, all of them. Oscar is an artistic member of the LGBTQ+ Disney+ community. Like Luis, she, them, all of them. Also got 10 stitches after demanding from fellow Hispanics the use of the term Latinx. Pet projects, legislation demanding the use of pronouns in all federal buildings. Funding at least one Pride Parade every spring, and inviting children to become trans kids starting from age 7. Favorite video game, Dragon Age, The Veilguard. Favorite Starbucks drink, Caramel Brulee Latte. Favorite movie, Cuties, 2020. Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Judy Chu settled a lawsuit against Leaders We Deserve for stealing the concept of their campaign, Choose Your Fighter. It was known that the lawsuit filed by Representatives Ocasio-Cortez and Chu on behalf of Choose Your Fighter was settled with Leaders We Deserve co-founder David Hogg. As a result of the agreement, David Hogg's organization will be able to use the word woke certified in their political communications, just as Senator Sanders's oligarchy tour. In exchange, the oligarchy tour will be able to count on 10 provenly cool kids whose role will be expressing themselves at every one of Sanders's rallies. It's a win-win deal, announced David Hogg in the company of Representatives Ocasio-Cortez and Chu in an improvised press conference outside the DNC's facilities. Former Washington Post reporter and now host of a new YouTube channel, Cleve R. Wootson Jr., raised his hand to ask whether Senator Sanders was aware of this agreement and was immediately expelled from the conference and fired from his new channel, once again, by Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who somehow showed up at the event as soon as Wootson finished his question. Just 24 hours after the IMF representatives left for Washington for deliberations and the investigation of new pocket change scandals was announced by the opposition, the Peronists, more damaging news was revealed by the newspaper Clarín. The new investigation into other possible scandals includes 1. Milei demanding kickbacks from street vendors irregularly allowed into the Casa Rosada. 2. Milei seizing public workers' lunchboxes and installing kiosks with prepared food at inflated prices. 3. Milei forcing federal workers to join the Argentinian YouTuber Terminester's channel and then demanding kickbacks from the YouTuber. 4. Milei paying his tailor and his Clarin subscription with $Libra meme coins for his suits. 5. Milei having charged Alejandro Fantino $20 for an interview when he charges others $50, and having left the caterer unpaid for 2 Cokes and 2 empanadas. G. Karina Milei, General Secretary of the Presidency of Argentina and the President's sister, was convoked to a Senate investigation panel inquiring about the Libra scandal. During the session, Ms. Milei was addressed with questions made by the Justicialist Party. Among them, 1. Ms. Milei, please let us know what your pronouns are. 2. Ms. Milei, please detail what you were doing during the latest LGBTQ+ Pride Parade and, if you were not in attendance, please explain why. 3. Ms. Milei, please, explain what your brother's presidency is doing to tackle the issue of the patriarchy. 4. Ms. Milei, please share with us the connections between the Libra scandal and the machismo denounced by the 8M marches, and, finally, 5. Ms. Milei, please respond directly to the question whether you had something to do with the Libra scandal. It's a yes or no question. H. Bicameral Congress hearings to determine what acts violate the emoluments clause after President is gifted a luxury 747 jet and announces he plans to keep it. A bicameral hearing was convoked in Congress to determine what acts violate the constitutional emoluments clause after accepting that President Trump's decision to keep in his presidential library the luxury 747 jet the Qatari government gifted him settled the issue that such a gift was not in violation of the aforementioned clause. Thus, after hours of deliberations, Congress decided that 1. Receiving good faith donations from lobbyists, foreign governments, autocratic or not, or Russia's former ambassador Lavrov, actually, from any of Putin's emissaries, like the aforementioned plane, is not in violation of the emoluments clause. 2. Benefiting from Trump meme coin purchases in exchange for pardons, promotions, or other government-related benefits is not in violation of the emoluments clause. 3. Receiving gold bars, like in Senator Melendez's case, is in violation of the emoluments clause only when the recipient is not President Trump. 4. Campaign contributions in exchange for favorable legislation and tariff exemptions for the donor are not in violation of the emoluments clause when the beneficiary is President Trump or Republican members of Congress. This exception will include Democratic members of Congress who docilely vote with Republicans to make America great. After expressing his support for the conclusions of the panel, Senator Schumer, approached by reporters outside Congress, declared that, as a good Democrat, he always caves to Republicans, and stated his confidence that the play dead strategy, mocked by detractors as weak and woke, will make of the victory of the ticket Harris-Biden in 2028 an accomplished fact. H. Secretary Rubio criticizes Germany, praises AfD, and asks Chancellor Merz why he can't cave to President Putin as everybody else. AfD almost lynches him as he tries to explain that he was not an illegal immigrant and that he came on behalf of Trump. President Trump would have laughed and called him Little Marco after learning of the incident. Secretary Rubio made a rare appearance outside the Maldives when, last Thursday, he visited Berlin to meet German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The visit would have been short, though, as Merz grew impatient when Rubio started criticizing Germany, praising the Alternative für Deutschland party, and reproaching him for not caving to President Putin's demands as everybody else does, for what he meant as Biden and Scholz did. After leaving the Chancellery, some reporters followed Rubio on his unannounced visit to Alexanderplatz, where his effusive camaraderie was not welcomed by the AfD, which was celebrating a rally. Taken for an illegal immigrant, Rubio was at first not given time to explain that he came bringing greetings from President Trump and barely escaped lynching. In the Rose Garden, asked about the incident, President Trump smirked and his only comment was "Little Marco," as he seemed to suppress a laugh before getting back to the White House. At the end of this edition, it was revealed that Secretary Rubio had suffered only a few scratches and bruises in the Alexanderplatz aggression and that he was on his way back to the Maldives. Foreign interests appear to be pouring millions into Trump's meme coin. Senator Schumer agrees with Republicans. It's not graft if President Trump does it, because if so, it's to make America great. And don't forget to watch Rachel Zegler's Snow White on Disney+. Senator Elizabeth Warren and ProPublica not only did raise visibility on the issue of foreign governments making significant purchases of Trump meme coin, but also they decried it as a violation of the emoluments clause, or, at least, an impropriety that might incentivize interested parties, national and foreign, to try to bribe the president. Meanwhile, DNC Chair Ken Martin declared that he could not provide declarations as Democratic leaders were in strict compliance with the "play dead" strategy, but said that he couldn't deny his agreement with Senator Schumer's assessment. Asked about Martin's words, Senator Schumer briefly declared, before going back to the Senate floor, that it's not graft if President Trump does it because, if so, it's to make America great, and don't forget to watch Rachel Zegler's Snow White on Disney+. Don't forget that, as Democrats, it's our thing to be meek, sometimes whine about how powerless we are, and then play dead. Florida man who harassed local family with Coldplay lyrics and surrendered to SWAT for pizza joins the Republican Party. Evan Charles McLemore, a Florida man accused of threatening a local family by texting them Coldplay lyrics and warning them of retribution from his Nazi prison associates, and who was persuaded by SWAT to end a standoff in return for a fresh slice of pizza, has officially joined the Republican Party and plans to invoke the same defense that has taken other felons out of the hook. Prior to his arrest, McLemore was wanted by police for aggravated stalking. The Pensacola News-Journal reported, with his stepmother claiming in February that he held a knife to his grandmother's throat and threatened to kill her. If other thugs can invoke that they patriots and say that's them beliefs deeply held, or something like that, you know, the stuff the January 6th patriots said, why can't I? Sides. The pizza was not Pizza Hut, was cheap pizza and it was cold, and them SWAT didn't give me time to enjoy my pizza. Just swallow it, they said. Them SWAT come all tough on me, and all to save them, said a family that didn't like Coldplay, declared McLemore briefly as he was presented to the press at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Immediately, the Republican Party of Florida provided him with representation. Evan Power, chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, declared as he was leaving the sheriff's office, as Mr. McLemore has joined the Republican Party, we have no doubt he is a patriot and so, based on the principle of non-discrimination, eligible to use the January 6th Patriot defense. Besides, it's unforgivable that the SWAT team promised him Pizza Hut and then came up with some cheap pizza that was even cold. We are going to see that those SWAT members are held accountable for their unprofessional behavior. Our lawyers might even get a $100,000 compensation for Mr. McLemore, as it has happened in similar cases in real American states. Florida man wrecks liquor shop, blames Caterpillar, and is freed after invoking the Patriot defense. Florida Attorney General believes the Florida Republican Party might have gone too far with this defense. Matthew Horace Jones, a Florida man arrested for destroying a liquor store under construction, told police he was Alice in Wonderland and that a hookah-smoking caterpillar ordered him to attack the site. Crestview police said it intended to accuse him of breaking into a fenced-in area and using a forklift to cause more than $100,000 in damage when the suspect demanded to call the Florida Republican Party and invoke the January 6th Patriot defense after joining the Republican Party. After he was processed by the Crestview police and presented to the press, Jones had the opportunity to offer brief declarations. I'm Republican now, MAGA, you know, patriot, whatever, and I demand, just like that dude Macklemore from Escambia County, my right to be freed and my $100,000 compensation. That's what the lawyer said. Soon after, the Crestview police let Jones go with the promise that his $100,000 check would be ready next week.
This has been the news of this hour. Sponsored by Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Did you vote for Trump in 2016 and then in 2020? This is the right church for you. If so, Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit is the only Christian church that can promise you in the Lord to have 72 virgins in heaven for only a donation of $50 a month. You will have access to those 72 virgins in heaven. For an additional $25, you will be allowed to replace 10 of them, and for $100, Heaven Premium, you will be allowed to choose them for yourself. Guaranteed, if you're not satisfied with those 72 virgins after you die, full refund of your money. We accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover.